How's it going, guys? I'm James Withy, and today I'm going to be providing tattoo advice for people with dark skin. Okay, so like I said, this video is all about providing information for people that have darker skin that are looking to get tattooed. Now, as far as who I'm talking about when I use the term darker skin, mainly I'm talking about black people, like people that are of East African descent. And the reason why is because those are the people that request this sort of information from me the most. And also because people that are of that specific ethnic group, their skin type has unique challenges that only exist within that skin type with regards to tattooing. But that doesn't mean that this information that's in this video can't also pertain to other ethnic groups, particularly like people that are like dark-skinned Mexicans, or people that are Indians from India, or even Native Americans that have darker skin, or like some Asians that have darker skin like Filipinos or like Cambodians or people like that. So the reason why I'm making this video is because this subject is literally the #1 most requested topic when people leave comments on my other YouTube videos and ask me to discuss a certain thing. And honestly, that doesn't really surprise me a whole lot, because I've looked around on the internet before to try to find reliable information that pertains to people that have darker skin with regards to tattooing, and the truth is there's very little of it on the internet. The reasons for this lack of information are numerous, but I feel like the biggest one is just because people that are able to talk on this subject, like professional tattoo artists that know that there's limitations and challenges that exist with dark skin that don't exist with other skin types, those people just don't want to jump on some public forum in front of the camera and discuss those things honestly, because it is a sensitive subject and there's a very high likelihood there's going to be some individuals out there that label them as racist if they discuss those things frankly. So I'm not going to sit here and lie to you guys and act like those things didn't cross my mind when it came time to make this video. But the reason I'm going to put it out anyway is because I feel like pretending that there are no differences between dark skin and lighter skin when it comes to the science of tattooing is a really unhealthy way to handle this entire topic. I feel like it's much more constructive just to put the information out there so that people with darker skin can utilize the information to end up with better tattoos at the end of the day. So I can't guarantee you guys that you're gonna be super happy with everything I'm telling you in this video. I can't guarantee that you're not gonna be disappointed if I tell you maybe you should get this type of tattoo or this style of tattoo but not that style of tattoo because of your skin type. But what I can guarantee you is that everything I'm saying in this video is stuff that I personally believe to be true, and it's all based on my professional experience as a tattoo artist. Okay, so first things first, I want to go ahead and talk about different variations of skin tone that can exist within the umbrella term of darker skin. And the reason why I think that's important is because we need to be on the same page objectively when we're talking about, different levels of darkness. So I don't want you guys to have to guess when I'm talking about like what mid-tone skin is, or like, what extra dark skin is, or maybe kind of dark or whatever. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use like a numerical system, which I'm going to go ahead and post up right here with an illustration that I made on my iPad. So basically what this shows is just, a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being extremely light skin and 10 being extremely dark skin. And for the purposes of the rest of this video, we're going to be using that system to refer exactly to how dark I'm actually talking about when I'm discussing certain things. So another thing that's probably worth clarifying with you guys is the fact that there are different types of colored undertones within the umbrella category of darker skin. So we all know that darker skin is brown, but there are many different types of brown. There's browns that are more yellowy based, there's browns that are more orange looking, browns that are more red looking, some of them are more purplish looking. So it's important for you to identify which one of these browns your skin tone is, because the color choices that are going to look good on your skin largely depend on what your undertone is. So the reason it's important to get pretty specific about what we're talking about in terms of like how dark the skin is or what the tone of the skin is because the level of darkness and the tone of the skin, they all affect the appearance of the tattoo in their own very unique way. So it's important to mention that when you're viewing a tattoo, you're looking at that tattoo through a transparent layer of skin. So if the tattoo is sitting right here and there's a dark brown layer of skin sitting on top of it, you have to understand that the appearance of that tattoo is going to be affected by that dark brown layer. And how much it's affected and in what way it's affected is totally dependent on a bunch of different variables in terms of how dark that dark brown skin is, and also what tone, like what undertone that skin has, just like we discussed earlier. As far as different ways that the appearance of the tattoo can be affected, one of them is definitely going to be like the lights and darks of the tattoo, like the values of the tattoo. The darker the skin is, the more subdued the lighter tones in the tattoo are going to be. So you kind of have like your range of lights and darks, and with the darker skin, your range of lights and darks shrinks. As far as like the color of the tattoo, you know, the darker the skin is, or the more like muted or neutral the skin is in terms of what type of brown it is, the more that's going to go ahead and neutralize the colors in your tattoo. Because I mean, overall, brown is a neutral color, so no matter what, it's going to neutralize it to a certain extent. But if you have like the purpley brown skin that's a lot more neutral looking than say like the reddish kind, then it's going to affect your colors quite a bit more than if you have one of the less neutral types of brown as your skin tone. So now that we've discussed different variations in skin tone, let's go ahead and talk about some of the technical challenges that tattoo artists face when they're doing tattoos on people with darker skin. So probably the number one thing that sticks out to me in terms of challenges when I'm tattooing darker skin is that it's harder to get like a nice wide range of lights and darks when I'm tattooing a really dark skin. So, you know, basically the way it works is like this. If I'm trying to do a piece that's very contrasty, very bold, very realistic, I want to have a nice, you know, range of values where I have my lightest lights and my darkest darks and everything in between. And in art, we call that chiaroscuro, which is basically like full value modeling. So that's how we get things to look really realistic in a piece of artwork. But because, you know, people with darker skin, we're viewing their tattoo through the transparent layer of brown skin that's on the top. Even if I were to put a really light tone like white into the skin, that layer that's on top is going to darken that white tone quite a bit and mute it down to where, you know, it can't be quite as bright white as it would be if I was like tattooing on somebody with fair skin. So the darker the skin you have, the more it shrinks like your range of lights and darks within a tattoo as a tattoo artist applying it, and it makes it very challenging to do all the same things with dark skin that I would be able to do with fairer skin. Another challenge that sticks out to me when I'm tattooing people with darker skin is that color choices are much harder to make with that skin type. And the reason why is because, like I said earlier, the brown skin that's sitting on top of the tattoo is basically neutralizing all the colors to a certain extent that I'm putting in the skin, and how much it neutralizes those colors depends on what the undertone of that brown skin is. And you know, early in my career, I didn't even realize that this is a factor. But later on, I started noticing that if I was tattooing on people that had more of a reddish brown skin, then colors that were like in the family of, like in the green family of colors, they started looking a lot more neutralized and a lot more muddy to me. And now that I know a little bit about color theory, I understand the reason why is because that red skin tone and that green that I'm putting underneath the skin, those are complementary colors, and they're effectively neutralizing each other when they optically mix, when you're viewing them, you know, in a combined way. So, you know, lately I've started to try to pick colors in my palette when I'm tattooing people with darker skin that are not the complementary opposite color of what their base skin tone is. So it makes it so you have to like have this extra like factor of thinking as far as like trying to choose which colors are going to be in your palette, and it makes it much more difficult to try to guess what's going to look good and what's not with that particular tone of skin. Another challenge that I have when I'm tattooing people with darker skin is that if the person has a skin tone that's darker than a level 8, and if they have a little bit more of like the purpley base brown for their skin tone, it gets very hard to see the stencil on their skin because the stencil is pretty dark just like their skin type, and the stencil is also like a purple based pigment. It's like a Tunisian ink or something like that. So the reason why that's important is because with some stencils, it's really imperative that I be able to see it even if it's really faint and I've already almost wiped it off of the skin. And oftentimes with like realistic tattoos or very intricate tattoos where I have a lot of detail in them, I will, you know, use that stencil all the way up to the point where it's almost ready to disappear, and I'll still need it to be visible on the skin. But if the skin is very dark and it's more of a purpley based brown, then the stencil pretty much ceases to be visible once it gets like 50% faded, whereas on like a fairer skin type, I'd be able to utilize that stencil all the way up until there's only 5% of it left or something like that. The last challenge that I'm going to discuss with regards to tattooing on darker skin only pertains to black people of East African descent that are a 7 through 10 on the scale of darkness. So, you know, if you are one of those people, then you're probably way more prone to getting keloid scars than somebody that doesn't have that skin type, whether they're dark skinned or whether they're light skinned or whatever. For some reason, people with that skin type that are of that ethnic background, even if the tattoo artist just overworks the tattoo just a little bit, they will get like a shinier, more raised up scar than normal. And it's probably something that's seriously worth considering if you're looking to get a tattoo and you have that skin type. If the idea of, even possibly having a scar like that is a total deal breaker for you, then I might seriously reconsider the whole idea of getting a tattoo in the first place if you don't have any already. If you do already have tattoos, then probably you're going to have a little bit better idea of how prone you are to this particular phenomenon, and you can make your decision based on that. But if you have none and you're very dark skinned and you're black, then take that into serious consideration, because it does happen quite a bit more often, even if the tattoo artist is skilled and knows what they're doing. Okay, so now that I've discussed some of the challenges and limitations that exist with darker skin in tattooing, let me go ahead and try to give you guys some advice on how you can end up with a better tattoo if you have one of these skin types. Okay, so the first piece of advice I can give you guys is that you want to evaluate your personal skin tone so that you can figure out where you fall on that scale of light to dark and what your color undertone is with your skin, so that you can make decisions based on that evaluation. Okay, so after you've evaluated your color of your undertone, it's really important to understand what the opposite family of colors is to the color that's your undertone. So the reason I'm mentioning that is because earlier, like I said, if you put colors in your skin that are complementary to your undertone, those colors are going to neutralize and they're going to look quite a bit more muddy than they would if you picked colors that were more aligned with what your undertone is. So for instance, if you have a yellowish undertone, avoid putting purples in your skin. If you have an orangish undertone, avoid putting blues in your skin. If you have a reddish undertone, avoid putting greens in your skin. If you have a purplish undertone, then you avoid putting yellows in your skin. Okay, so as an example of this concept, I'm going to show you guys a picture of a tattoo sleeve that I completed a few months ago on one of my black clients. This guy has a orangish undertone on his skin, and during this sleeve I used a really wide variety of colors because honestly I really hadn't considered like how those colors would be affected by his base skin tone very much, and I ended up kind of learning the lesson on that, where if you look at the tattoo, most of the colors that are in the same color family as his orange undertone, like the oranges, the reds, the yellows, those colors look a lot more brighter and unaffected by his skin tone than the ones that are in the family that's kind of like the opposite of his skin tone. So like the colors that are more bluish, even like the bluish greens inside of the monster that's going like this, those colors look a lot more muted in his skin, and it's because his skin tone has that orangish look to it, and it's kind of conflicting and neutralizing those colors that are underneath the skin. So, like I said, the stuff that's warmer looks a lot brighter, and if you have like a skin tone that's, easily identifiable in terms of what color it is in your undertone, you should try to envision your tattoo having the types of colors that are aligned with that color family. Okay, so while we're on the subject, I want to go ahead and just throw out my professional opinion for you guys out there that have darker skin, that if you guys are darker than a 6 on that scale of 1 to 10 in terms of darkness, if you're darker than a 6, you probably shouldn't get a color tattoo. And the reason why is because if your skin's that dark, your skin is going to neutralize the colors quite a bit, and it's going to make them like way more muddy than they would look if they were in a lighter skin tone. Not only that, but a lot of color tattoos tend to contain colors that have like a lot of white in them for the lighter tones. And if you guys watch my white ink video, I mentioned in there that the more melanin your skin has, the darker your skin is, the more like weird little like brown blotches all your white tones are going to have, because you're artificially lightening the skin with that white tone, and your body's going to produce more melanin kind of as a countermeasure to try to protect the skin from the sunlight where it's perceived itself as being too light. The reason why black and gray is a better option for skin that's this dark is because none of the tones in black and gray contain any white at all. So you're not going to have this problem with this blotchiness or this staining because of the melanin that's in your skin. It's just straight black that's watered down to different degrees if you're doing black and gray. So you're not going to have that problem unless it's in the areas that have like a minute amount of white highlights and that sort of thing. The only exception to this that I can think of is if you're getting a very simple tattoo that only has like maybe one color in it that's aligned with your, like the color of your undertone of your skin. So if you're like a red bone black person, like a person that has a reddish skin tone, and you're below a 6, but maybe like above an 8, then you might be able to get away with having a tattoo that has black outlines with maybe just one object in it that's colored solid red. Because that red doesn't have any white in it at all, it's not going to have that weird blotchiness or staining, although the red will be less visible than it would be if it was on somebody that had very light skin. Okay, so let's go ahead and go back to black and gray for a second, and let's talk particularly about realistic tattoos. in a realistic tattoo, it's really important for your tattoo to have a full range of lights and darks so that it has that realistic believability to it. Now, when a tattoo artist does a tattoo on you, basically what he's using is a gray wash system that is a combination of black and a bunch of different levels of diluted black that create the different tones in your skin. So for instance, like your tattoo artist will have 5 caps out on his tray, where one cap is filled totally with black ink, then another one's filled with half black ink, half water, then another one has 8 drops of black and the rest of it's water, all the way up to the last one where it's just 1 drop of black and the rest of it's water. Now, the reason I'm mentioning this is because it's really important to understand that if your skin is a certain level of darkness, the only washes that are going to show up in your skin are washes that are darker than your skin tone. So if your skin is a level 5 on that scale of darkness that I was talking about earlier, no washes above a 5 are going to show up in your skin, and the darker your skin gets, the less sense it makes to try to get like a tattoo that has a really wide range of lights and darks, which is pretty much all realistic tattoos. So for that reason, if your skin tone is below an 8, if you're an 8 or a 9 or a 10 on that level of darkness, I would recommend against getting realistic tattoos, because you're not going to have that full range of lights and darks that create that like real level of believability that it needs. Now with that said, there are ways to cheat. You know, if you get a tattoo in an area that gets less sun exposure on your body and you're somebody that's like a 7 or an 8, like if you're on the borderline, that area that has less sun exposure, such as like the forearm or something, you might be able to get a tattoo on there that, you know, kind of like sidesteps all those rules or whatever, because you're able to get a wider range of lights and darks in there because your skin's a little bit lighter in those areas. So I'm going to show you guys a picture of a hummingbird that I did right now on a chick that's probably like, I don't know, a 6.5 or a 7 as far as her level of darkness. You know, this tattoo worked out pretty well because it's in that area on the inside of her forearm, but if it was on like the outside of her forearm, then it probably wouldn't have shown up quite as well in terms of all the little details and like the lights and darks that I put in there. Likewise, I did this tattoo on my buddy Xavier, Xavier Price Art. You guys should go ahead and check him out. He's one of the guys that works in my shop, and I did this skull and rose on him that showed up pretty well because it's on the inside of his forearm, and he's probably like a 7 or something like that on the scale of darkness. So he's like right there on the borderline too, but it did show up pretty well. And he also has a really nice tattoo on the inner bicep of like a Guy Fawkes mask from V for Vendetta, and that showed up very well on him too because it's on that inside part of his bicep that's lighter than the other areas of his body. So 2 more tips that I can give you guys is that you want to pick really legible subject matter, and that you want to go as big as possible with the design so that your tattoo is more readable just because it's bigger. So a really great example of that is my buddy Gio that I tattooed when I was at the Detroit Expo. I did a big Buddha on his stomach, which is it's still in progress. We haven't finished it yet, but I did a big Buddha on his stomach that you can tell what it is right away because it's giant and it's a fucking Buddha. Everybody knows what a Buddha looks like, and that motherfucker's really big. So it makes it so that even from far away, you can tell exactly what his tattoo is the minute you look at it. And you know, this dude's not extremely dark by any means. He's probably like, I don't know, 6.5, maybe a 7 or something. But he was able to get a nice realistic tattoo that's totally legible because of the subject matter and because of the size. So another thing that's worth mentioning is that if you are, you know, an 8 or a 9 or a 10 on that scale of darkness, you might want to consider staying away from any tattoo style that uses any ink other than black. So, you know, like I said, color is going to be greatly neutralized by your skin tone, so you want to stay away from that. Gray wash, you know, you're not going to be able to see any wash that's in your skin that's lighter than your skin tone. So you really want to just stick with styles that only utilize black. And honestly, there's a fuckload of styles that are really great that you can do that with. You know, you can get geometric tattoos, you can get tribal tattoos, Polynesian tattoos, you can get American traditional tattoos, you can get dot work like stippling tattoos. All those things look really great on you know, dark skin, and they're very legible, and you'll have a higher chance of being happy with your tattoo if you choose one of those styles rather than trying to get something that's really hyper realistic portrait stuff or like color tattoos or that sort of thing. Okay, so another piece of advice I can give you guys is you want to make sure that your tattoo artist actually has experience with your skin type with tattooing on darker skin. And unfortunately, you're probably going to have to ask them directly whether or not they do have that experience, because the truth is most tattoo artists don't have as many pictures of people with darker skin in their portfolio as they do lighter skin. And you know, the reason why isn't because they're racist or anything. You know, one reason is because there's just less people with darker skin than there are lighter skin in the United States of America. Another reason why is because tattooing darker skin is much harder than tattooing lighter skin. So, you know, consequently, a lot of their better work is going to be on stuff that, you know, was the easier skin type, and that's what they're going to be putting in their portfolio because they want to, put the best examples of their work forward. And the third reason is because like photographing tattoos that are on darker skin is much harder because there's way more glare. And a really great way to illustrate an example of that is like bodybuilding competitions. Motherfuckers like spray themselves with that crazy like fake tan or whatever, because when they're on the stage, that tan creates more glare and creates like more appealing muscular definition in that particular respect. But when it comes to a tattoo, that glare is the absolute fucking enemy. And it really is something that we combat constantly, even with people with lighter skin, when we're taking photographs of our tattoos. So unfortunately, that does mean that it's gonna be a little bit harder for you to shop around for a tattoo artist if you do have darker skin. Maybe an exception to that would be if you're shopping around in areas where, people are more predominantly gonna have dark skin, like in Atlanta or Detroit or something like that. I did notice that in one of the other comment threads on one of my other YouTube videos, where people were talking about like pictures of like black clients and artist portfolios, one of my viewers kind of like commented a bunch of different artists that have a bunch of cool like examples of them tattooing darker skin. And a lot of those tattoo artists, when I started looking them up on Instagram, some of them are actually based in Atlanta. So if you're willing to travel and you are looking for somebody that kind of like specializes in tattooing darker skin, that might be a really great place to start. Start looking at tattoo artists that are in those areas where it's going to be predominantly black people, or at least a higher percentage of black people, and you're probably going to get better results as far as getting somebody that has an extreme amount of experience with that skin type. Okay, so the last piece of advice I can give you guys before I wrap this video up is that you want to ask your artist what their advice is as far as your particular tattoo, and you want to trust them as much as possible. So, when you ask them about whether or not something's going to work on your skin type, they might not give you an answer that you like, but you have to respect them for being honest, and it's a really great idea to consider their advice and kind of like let them direct, how the tattoo process goes in terms of its creative direction, because they're making recommendations based on what they think is going to look best on you. So another benefit to this, to like asking, their advice and being really open-minded, is that when you're kind of letting them communicate freely without being scared of, you leaving a bad review because they're perceived as, being racist for not wanting to do a certain tattoo on you, you're going to be able to learn more about what they know about tattooing on black skin or darker skin just by listening to what they have to say about the entire thing. So it's a really great way to kind of fish for information on whether or not they're going to be able to handle the project. If you just say, hey, well, what do you think about this? Do you have any other suggestions on how I can make this tattoo better? Should I make it bigger, smaller? Is this a style that I should be going with? Is this possible on my skin type? When you ask all those questions, you're going to be gathering a lot of information about what they know about tattooing on your particular skin type, and that's going to help you make the decision of whether or not you want to commit to the project and make them the man or woman for the job. Okay, so that's about it. What we've discussed in this video is the different variations of skin types that there can be within the umbrella term of dark skin. We've also talked about some of the challenges that tattoo artists face when they're tattooing this skin type. And we've also talked about some tips and pieces of advice that I can give to clients that possess this skin type that are looking to get the best tattoo possible. This video was a pretty hard video to make because not only is it a lot of information to be packing into one video, but also because it was very difficult for me to clarify these things for myself so that I could make sure that I was absolutely positive that this is, what I think and how I want to present this information in the most honest and scientific and considerate way. So, by no means am I infallible as far as this subject goes. There's a lot of other tattoo artists out there that might know more about this subject than I do. But I really hope that I did a good job for you guys in terms of just letting you know what I know about this subject so that you can be better equipped to get a good tattoo in the future. It's also worth mentioning that this skin type, like dark skin or like black skin or whatever, isn't the only skin type that has challenges that tattoo artists have to kind of work around to create the best result possible. So, there's other skin types like people that have a fuckload of freckles, or people that, are really sun-baked because they work outside and do construction work and their skin is more leathery, or, people that are older, or people that have like stretch marks, all them different type of things. Those different skin types also have their own challenges, and I'm going to be making videos about those things as well to try to help to advise them on how they can get the best tattoos possible as well. So I really hope that this was helpful to some of you guys. Any questions you guys have that I didn't cover in the video, you can leave in the comments. I'm going to try to do my best to answer any of those questions that you have so that I can really, cover all bases in terms of things that I missed when I made this video. But yeah, until then, we'll see you next time. Have a nice day.